It's difficult for us to truly comprehend today what an astounding innovation Athenian democracy was in its own time. Not only did it replace the natural bonds of kinship with something more complex, hard-won, and more quintessentially human, the bonds of social collaboration and coordination, it also replaced the primordial rule of the few over the many and a hegemony that was handed down by birth with its inverse, the rule of the many over the few, where those who were granted power were given it only temporarily by the governed, and so appointed leaders were necessarily held accountable for their deeds by the entire society. Politics in democratic Athens were different from democratic politics today. For one thing, there were no political parties, so people didn't hold ideological lines the way we do nowadays. This meant that, to a large extent, the politics of Athens could be quite unpredictable. Political decisions, such as whether to establish a colony, exile a citizen, build a wall, send troops to defend an ally, and so on, often turned on the persuasiveness of an individual's speech or argument. In Athens' democracy of the 5th century BCE, surprisingly, there wasn't much in the way of a demagogic or elite statesman who could unequivocally impose his will or agenda on the masses. Instead, that individual citizen, no matter how high-standing and elite he was, or alternatively how low-born and penurious, had to convince his fellow citizens that his own plan of action was superior to those being proposed by his rivals. He would have to start fresh each and every time. In contrast to our political parties today, which assume somewhat predictable or prescribed positions on issues, things were judged more or less on a case-by-case basis in Athens' democracy. The outcome of a decision depended on the arguments people made in the moment and how convincing they could be. It would have been nearly impossible for an individual statesman to receive thorough, widespread, and durable agreement from his fellow citizens on all things and all courses of action. He would have to win fresh support with each new initiative, as though starting from scratch each and every time. As far-fetched as it may seem, for the most part this actually worked. People gave thoughtful speeches on the issues, weighed the pros and cons, responded to the positions of their adversaries, defended themselves against attack, and gave reasoned arguments for their proposed plan of action. When it was a fellow citizen's turn to speak, others listened. They had to listen carefully, too, because someone else may well make a better argument, requiring them to consider some adjustment to their view. It might just be that someone else had a better take on the issue, and in that case, a better course of action to follow.